let's look at some different techniques for enhancing photos to make them really pop. Our first picture, we're looking at leading lines. Notice how the highway draws you into the picture. Likewise, you have the same effect going out on the pier, looking under the pier, and creates a very nice design. Notice the posts, if they repeat themselves, that kind of makes a pattern, and also there's a sort of rhythm created which helps with the flow of the image. Now, the focus that I'm going to have here is on the horizon line. I don't know if you can see it, but let's make it stand out a little bit. Okay, see the red line, that helps us see it better. And you want to keep that level. The horizon, and if you have a water image, you want to keep it either in the lower third quadrant or the upper third part of the picture. You don't want to have it in the center because that tends to cut your image in half. Here we have an example of a silhouette effect. You notice the bright sunlight in the distance hitting our subjects from the other side, and we get the silhouette, which makes for very pleasing designs. Notice the people in the water. That helps balance the picture out. You have a primary focus here, right here, with the couple, and then over here you have the people in the water, smaller version. So that's a sort of a subcategory of the focus. Okay, we have main focus and secondary focus, and even further in the distance we have more people. Now let's break this down a little bit. The couple in the foreground fit right at a intersection of what we call the rule of thirds. Okay, you have several, you have like 9 boxes in each, and you have lines that intersect, and where they intersect are places where you ideally want to have your main focus. It's always good to have some main focal point to your image. So here's a couple holding hands, walking along there, and then you have the secondary people in the distance almost fit in the second spot. And then notice the green line, we have the horizon. Notice that's level. Try to keep it level, because when you slant it, it takes away from your image. So always try to keep your horizon level. Again, we have a silhouette effect, sun setting in the background, and a Ferris wheel. Makes for a very pleasing design. And here we have the sun setting in the background, which highlights the flowers here, and you can almost see the little tiny hair-like things that are on the flower that make it stand out and they shine. So this is what we call backlighting effect. And in this image we have the beautiful leaves here, fall leaves, and you have the leaf in the background creating a shadow over the closer leaf. Kind of a cool effect. Also notice where the leaf is located in the image. If you were to draw the grid, you'd have it right here. The main focus is here where a line would intersect. Again, we have a beautiful leaf here with some water droplets on it early in the morning. and it falls right in that, again, in that area where the lines would intersect at one of the intersecting areas. So that would be the focal point right here. So it falls right in that point, and it creates a very aesthetically pleasing design. Here we go. Here's the grid over the leaf, and you see how it fits right in that category. Again, the same rule would apply for people. This gentleman, his head falls right into that intersecting area. It would be right over here, and it falls right into that same class as the others. So we have some different kinds of balance. We have symmetrical balance, where you have like a seesaw. And on the seesaw, you got two balls, and they're exactly the same size. So that would be symmetrical, okay? And that simplifies the idea. And you'll see that in some of the images we're going to look at now. This is somewhat symmetrical. You have two flowers, but ideally you want to have an odd number. And the reason I say that is even numbers tend to be static. So you try to have, let's say, either 1, 3, 5, 7, odd numbers tend to be more interesting. Even numbers tend to be kind of static. And here we have a mirror effect. So sometimes two things can be create a very nice effect, and in this case it does. So, the rules are not set in cement. They are meant to be broken. But when you're first learning photography, it's always a good idea to try to stick with the techniques that we're talking about today. All right, here's an example of a radial design. Yes, that's my head. And I used an app on my cell phone to create this. And here we have a milkweed plant that's flowering, and it has sort of a radial effect. So sometimes just things that are centered, that are not asymmetrical, can be very pleasing, as well as the asymmetrical kind of design. And here's another example of pattern and rhythm. Notice the little leaves on the fern, and in the fall you have the fall colors and the light shining through, making for a very pleasing design. And you have the repetition, which is the pattern, and then you have the slight changes as you move across each little leaf on the fern. So with asymmetrical balance, the little seesaw or teeter-totter, whatever you want to call it, you have different things on either side of the center point, and but it still balances. So you have enough weight on the right to balance that bigger weight on the left. So we see that in photographs. Now here's an example where we see 3 flowers. You have an odd number, it makes for a very nice design. So we have 3 flowers here. And sometimes you just have random objects on the ground, and they make for very pleasing designs. So you have a leaf that's changing colors, and little nuts on the ground, and other leaves and sticks and so forth, but it makes for a very nice design. It seems to hold together pretty well. If you let your eyes follow this thing, you have the object, and your eyes are led over here into this area, and you're led over here, and it comes right back. You have your eyes keep moving around through the whole thing, and a good design will make you do that. And here we have some Canadian geese that, notice they're different sizes because of their proximity to the camera. They have the one large geese, and then one medium, and then smaller, and so forth. And you have a variety, and that makes for a nice design as well. Here we have a covered bridge. This is in Greenville County, South Carolina. And we have this is what we call a frame in a frame. Okay, the picture itself is framed, as you see, and then you have the bridge framing a little rectangular space in the distance. That can be very useful. Here's another way a picture can be framed. You have notice a tree, the leaves hanging down, the tree, the shadow, and that kind of helps frame the scenery in the background. And here's one I did with using Photoshop and some other tools. I created what looks like a frame inside a frame inside a frame and so on. Then we have this hummingbird. Now you'll notice I left a space to the right of the hummingbird, and that allows for, psychologically speaking, the bird is going to be moving toward the right, so it would fill that space. It's always better when you have a moving object to put a little bit more in front of the moving object, so it will psychologically complete your image and you have a pleasing design. Same thing here. Notice I left a space to the left because this particular bird is looking to the left. Reflections are always nice too. If you can get a reflection in there, that enhances your picture. And here we have some turkey buzzards up in an old tree, and they're just relaxing. Now this is an example of negative space. You have the negative space which takes up in other words, the surrounding space around the birds, all the space here and so forth. It is taking up the space in the picture, and sometimes that is a desired effect. Now here we have a picture, and it's kind of busy, and this is an example of taking a picture from a different point of view. Sometimes, instead of always looking straight at something or looking down at things, sometimes you get down low and look at it at, let's say, at ground level. I think that's what this was. I had the camera on the ground, and I enhanced it with the next picture, you'll see. Got rid of the distracting things and added a sky using Photoshop. Now here I used just a simple smartphone camera, and I got an adapter to go on the lens of the smartphone that would give it a fisheye effect. So you don't have to go out and necessarily buy a very expensive fisheye lens. If all you want to do is just a few little activities like this, and you get kind of what we'll call an ant's eye view of something. It's kind of cool. And here we have an antique car. I really love antique cars, especially the really old ones. And so I thought to myself, how can I make this really cool looking and get rid of all this distracting background? So this is what I did to it using Photoshop. And here is a cannon, and this is located at Fort Moultrie in Charleston area of South Carolina. And it's a cannon, but you have some things that are distracting in the background. So I decided I'm going to move in a little closer and get rid of the distracting items in the picture. And this is what we have next. It helps us focus more on the cannon and not look at other things that might take our attention away from the subject. Now here's an example of texture being a very useful element in a picture. The rust, to me, that's creating some very colorful and interesting textures. I really like that rust pattern on this old, I think it was an old Chevy, and it really seems to work well. I like that. Now, sometimes you may want to create an effect by just switching into black and white mode. And it was kind of a misty day and low clouds. And this is High Brighton Mountain in a little small town called Lenoir. And this is what I saw. I pulled the car off the side of the road and I took that picture. With, of course, a few enhancements with Photoshop. Now, the time of day you take pictures is also a factor in creating very pleasing color and effects that you might desire. In the early morning light, the first hour after sunrise, and that hour just before sunset, you have what we call the golden hour. And you get that beautiful warm light. And here's an example with the warm light hitting this beautiful scenery here. This is on Price Lake, right off of the Blue Ridge Parkway, not far from Blowing Rock, North Carolina. And here's one of my 4 cats who's sitting on the dining room table, and her name's Gracie, by the way, and just captured that nice warm afternoon light. And you see how I've tried to compose the picture so as not to have too many distracting things in the picture, and I tried to get her head right at that point, which would be, if we had a grid on here, it would be at that intersection of the grid, using that rule of thirds thing that we talked about. And here's an old barn. Get that afternoon light again, golden hour time. I used a wide angle lens, so therefore we get a little bit of a distortion here, but it's still kind of a pleasing effect. I like the color on that barn. And I think this is our last image, so I hope these little tips will help you, and happy shooting with your cameras. Hope you all have a maybe some greater impact on your photography than what you've had in the past with using the elements and principles of design that we just talked about. Have a great day, everybody. Bye-bye for now.